one more time for Andrew McCarthy. Let's hear it. Andrew, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, thanks.
Just Fly Away, your first book. Congratulations.
It's actually my first novel. I've written another book, a travel book. But
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Your first novel, how did it start? When did the moment start where you started writing prose, when you felt like, oh, okay, I could maybe be a novelist?
I'm still wondering. But this book I started about, in a different version, I guess about 7 or 8 years ago. I thought I was writing a story of a man who has an affair and has a child out of wedlock and tries to keep a secret. It was really a story about marriage and secrecy and stuff, and how does a secret sort of corrode intimacy. And then I was struggling with it for years. This is more than you asked for, isn't it? But I was struggling with it for years, and then my favorite character was always the 15-year-old daughter. And at one point, I just started writing from her point of view, and it changed everything. And suddenly I was writing this young adult novel, and it was all about a girl who finds out she has a brother who lives across town that she never knew about, and about family secrets and how long these things have been secrets and how everybody's keeping various secrets. And so it sort of morphed and changed into that.
It's kind of the greatest part of the process of writing, where you feel lost and stuck, and then all of a sudden you say, well, what about this perspective? And everything begins to open up for you.
Yeah, it was totally that. I mean, I was struggling, literally for years kind of writing this, and then the minute I kind of went from her point of view, I was sitting on a plane. I know exactly where I was sitting on a plane waiting for it to take off, and I just started writing, my dad is, and then suddenly I knew, oh, I'm writing it this way. And I must have written 100 pages from her point of view till I realized to myself and accepted to myself that I'm writing a different book than I thought I'd been writing. And so all the stuff I'd written before I sort of threw out, kept the nugget of the story, and it became this.
How do you characterize or define YA at this point? Because this is, while it is from the perspective of a young adult, it is a fairly mature story.
Well, I found out I knew nothing about young adult novels except reading Catcher in the Rye and A Separate Peace. When
is Catcher in the Rye considered young adult?
If it came out now, it'd be a YA novel.
Wow.
But
I guess all those, like Franny and Zoo, and
all that stuff. Yeah. But YA now is this huge market, and half the readers of YA are adults, which I had no idea. And
just trying to capture that magic one last time.
Yeah, but I think that's what it is. No, I think that's what it is in the sense that there's that moment of youth that's a sort of ferocious vulnerability, and we sort of explode from that. And those kind of readers want that kind of immediacy and sort of that emotional rawness about it. And a lot of YA books are really potent and powerful and tackling really extraordinary themes now.
Was that moment in your life where you weren't jaded, you had no cynicism, your music affected you in an incredible way?
And everything matters. I'm the only one who's ever felt this. And
you get actually a sense of that in the first, few chapters of your book. That was one of the things that I remember thinking was like, oh, he's capturing the way a teenager feels really well here in regards to her relationships and her parents, and everything is 150%
everything is 150, and I'm the only one who's ever felt it. I'm unappreciated. I'm misunderstood. No one is seeing me. And my secret fear is that my life actually might never happen.
I wish I could have gotten over that. I'm 33. I'm still
but there's that moment where you feel like, is life going to happen? I remember when I was a 15-year-old kid looking in the mirror and just thinking, wish I could know what I'll look like in 10 years. I was afraid sort of my life wasn't going to happen, for lack of it. I didn't know how else to describe it. That feeling of, am I the only one that's going to be left behind in all this?
Were you already an actor at that point, though, when you were 15?
No, I discovered acting when I was 15. I was in a high school play, and but no, I didn't get my first professional job till I was 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
at 15, though, I have to say my life changed. I walked out on stage in a play, and I was the Artful Dodger in Oliver, and my life changed. The second I walked out on stage, I knew, like, oh my gosh, there I am, in a way that I'd never thought before. I was sort of complete in a way or accessible and vibrant in a way I'd never been before. I've been waiting for something to happen in my life, and that's what happened.
Going back to the book, you have 3 children of your own.
Yeah, it feels like 30. Yeah.
Were you thinking about them at all while you were writing this book? Because so much of what this book is about, and what I really loved about it, was this idea of when a child or a teenager realizes that their parents are a human being, given to the same sort of weaknesses and faults, or even private lives that they would have never dreamt of before.
Well, I think that's all of us. That's a moment in growing up when we realize our parents are separate people. I was an event in my parents' life, not the event in my parents' life. Right. You know what I mean? And a lot of us are still waiting to discover that moment. And I think it's a shocking moment. And you're left suddenly untethered in the world. You feel less safe in the world because suddenly your parents are human and have foibles and flaws and all those kind of things. And I think it's a real life changer when that happens, once that discovery is made.
What did you think about your children when you were writing this? The moment that they're
that
going to
was your
discover
question.
that? Yeah.
I didn't really. My son is now 15, which is the age of Lucy in the book, and I mean he's a very different kid than Lucy. I think Lucy really is, in a very real way, me when I was 15. You know, and that whole idea of and people have asked why are you writing from a girl's point of view, and I think I don't know is the answer, except that's where it came from. And it's sort of like when you're acting and you do an accent, and suddenly I'm free because and all these words that I didn't know are coming out of me because I'm hiding behind this funny accent, and you're allowed to be sort of more revealing than I might be had I just been sort of writing from a boy's point of view in a certain way. But no, I don't think it's... I think if it's like my kids in any way, it's that they're extraordinarily mature in certain moments, and then so childlike in the next. And I think that's the way we all are to some degree. But I mean, particularly adolescents are so wise and worldly wise, and sort of so jaded and cynical, and then the next moment so needy and so vulnerable. And it's hard going through the world trying to till that sort of gap gets lessened, you know. And I think all teenagers are struggling with that to a certain degree.
Now you said you got you landed your first big role at 19, right? Was that Class?
Yeah, a movie called Class.
That was Class with Rob Lowe, right?
Yeah, Rob Lowe and Jacqueline Bisset.
It's a great, I think, undiscovered or really not really talked about film from that era. I love that
I don't know how great it is, but I mean,
I remember seeing it when I was like 16, late at night, and thinking it was really weird. And
no, it's kind of weird because it's about this guy who has an affair with his best friend's mother.
It's weird.
So it's kind of funny, but it's not really funny. And so it's.
So I mean, you have Class and you have Heaven Help Us, and then you have this series of movies where I mean you're catapulted very quickly, right? St. Elmo's Fire is like a couple years after Class, essentially.
Yeah.
So you're very quickly catapulted to stardom. When did you decide to start writing and to start directing? Because now, whether or not people know it, he is one of the great TV directors living in New York City. All your favorite shows that shoot in this city, he has directed many episodes of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an accidental television director and an accidental YA author. You know, most of the things that happened to me just sort of seem to have been an accident. I started writing about 15 years ago. I mean, that's a longer story, but I used to travel quite a lot, and it changed my life, and I became a travel writer. And I started writing about travel a great deal, and then it just sort of slowly morphed into, you know, a book about travel, and then it morphed, you know, into this book. There's something about just sitting down alone that I like.
Sitting down alone and writing and crafting
there's
something out.
About that I like. And, you know, I like walking down the street and having people's voices in my heads that are my invention, not, you know, characters' voices and people sort of occupying that space in my head. I like that feeling. So
was there a point for you where the life of an actor wasn't as fulfilling as you had hoped it would be, and you sort of decided to branch out?
Yeah. I mean, no one has ever actually asked me in such a candid way. I think
no,
it's really good because I think in a very real way, yeah. I mean, I hadn't acted in a number of years till I acted last year on a television show, and I loved it again. I realized how sort of much it had meant to me and how much a part of me it is, but I don't particularly miss it when I'm not doing it. I like the idea in a certain way of applying the skill that I have as if it's whatever it is. You know, to directing, I'm just applying however good or not good I am at it, I'm just applying my skill. Whereas acting, I sort of am the thing. And I love the idea of just sort of, this is what I do. And whereas acting, it's very much subjective, and I'm the center of that thing. And for my ego and all, and the way I like to walk through the world, I don't particularly crave that kind of constant attention like that. I like applying the skills and stuff, and I love sort of creating stuff like that. And acting and directing and writing, it's all sort of the same thing to me. But yeah, acting I sort of stepped away from in a certain way.
Well, they both involve craft, but the craft at the end of the day for a director is very tangible, and you can kind of look at it and you can see everything that was applied to it. And a lot of times with acting, I feel like even the best of actors really don't know. They're like, I hope that was good. I hope we were good here.
That's
so you're
really
like
true.
Always existing, even the most confident of actors is always existing within this kind of needy space, because it's like
it's true. You just sort of had to step out, and is the floor going to catch me?
Yeah.
You know, whereas directing, it's like we're doing this and we're doing that. You know, but and in acting, it's very much you're just sort of jumping out of a plane in a certain way, and yeah, it's a precarious feeling that I don't always love.
So when did it start for you? I saw on your IMDb that you did a short, and then from the short you jumped into TV directing. So
yeah, I directed a short film that I'd had in my from a story I'd read years before. Anyway, I directed a short film, and then I was on a show, acting on a show, and the director fell out. I was actually sitting eating lunch with the producer, and they got a call while we were eating, and he said, yeah, oh, okay, thanks. I said, what was that? And he goes, our director, next director just fell out. And I said, I'll do it, without thinking anything. And he just looked at me, and he said, you want to? And I said, yeah. And so he let me direct an episode, and it went well, and then you do another, and then suddenly...
What show was that?
That was called Lipstick Jungle.
Right.
And then I directed other shows, Gossip Girl and whatnot, and then I directed the show Orange is the New Black in the first season when they were doing that, and I directed a bunch of those, and then suddenly that was the surprise hit of the century when no one expected that, and I directed a bunch of them, so then suddenly I was a brilliant director because I directed. So, you know, so then here I am being a TV director now in this way, which is great, you know. It's the same thing like with the travel writing. I wrote travel stories for years and years, and then suddenly I won an award at it, and oh my God, he's brilliant. He's really very good, you know. And it's so.
It's that moment of recognition that finally happens and everybody decides. But
or it's a bit like that old Hollywood saying, "Is the script any good?" And I don't know. I'm the only one who's read it. If other people validate it, then oh yeah, no, very good. He's very thoughtful, very good.
What is that like when suddenly you're validated for something like Orange is the New Black, where more so than anything else, even movies, TV is incredibly collaborative. It requires so many people that are really putting together that aesthetic that different directors can step in each episode and do their own thing while at the same time fulfilling what the show has already established.
Yeah, being a TV director is a really specific kind of thing. You're absolutely right. And it's not, whereas in movie, it's much more direct from the director down. In TV, it's much more about the writer-creator down. You know, and directors do come in and fill in and slot in. So it's a weird sort of dynamic. You want to come in and add your own stamp, but be able to be open to what they want. But they want you to give it a little something, but not too much of something, because our show is this. Don't do that. But do that. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but we like that. You know what I mean? So it's a weird, and it's very collaborative, like you're saying. And there's something about that I really enjoy. You know, and I love then going back into my room and being alone at the computer. You know what I mean? But there's something, TV is a very collaborative kind of thing.
Are you thinking at all of directing films, feature films, or maybe even trying to sell this and direct this, make this into a film?
Well, it's funny. I mean, in writing this, I mean, just because of being an actor and directing and things for so long, the way I create anything is visually. You know what I mean? I don't know how people do it that aren't visual. I just see it and then I write it. So this I sort of wrote in my mind as a story that I was watching happen. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd love to eventually direct a film. But I mean, TV now has such extraordinary kind of stuff going on in it, and there's a, you know. I think where it's at in that way is creating a television show, so it's all yours, and you know, in that regard, and then you're helping. You know, everything goes out from you in that way.
Now, this period of time that you were, I don't want to use the phrase Brat Pack. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I mean, it's interesting. The Brat Pack, the whole thing is like, at first it was this kind of what? Oh, and then you know, over the years, it's become this sort of affectionate, iconic term for this moment in a generation's youth that probably never even actually happened. You know what I mean?
There's like a bunch of people who got roles in movies.
Yeah, and so, but it's said with great sort of now, it's with sort of wistful, oh yeah.
Well, you got to think of it, it was probably a total of what, like 7 years?
At most.
At most, like 7 years of your life. And in many ways, you can't, I mean, you're here promoting a book, you direct incredible amounts of television, and yet I would be remiss if I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you questions about the Brat Pack.
Oh, no, it'll be, when I die, it'll be Andrew Pretty and Pink McCarthy has died. You know.
Is that weird, though, that your
no,
career in life is in many ways consistently defined, or at least this 7-year period when you were very young is always poured over?
Oh, look, the Beatles were the same thing. It was just a few years. But it's true. You look at the Beatles, when they're 64 to 69, and that's it? Really? Anyway, and it's exactly the same as the Beatles.
You're absolutely right. Mean, Rob Lowe's sax solos and St.
Really
Elmo's Fire
very much like Hey Jude, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. You know what I mean? But I think it's absolutely fine now. Like I say, for years I ran from it, I think, in a certain way. But now I think it's absolutely fine. You know, those movies touched a generation of people, and now a second generation. They show it to their kids, and it means something to people in a certain way. And I think it's great, you know. I mean, they're not what I think is the creative high point of my life, and yet there's something about them. If I were to look at them again and look at myself in them, I don't think my acting is particularly that great, but there's something about the sort of vulnerability and accessibility and just openness that eye, and we all sort of had in those movies. This unjaded, that's really sort of allows people in, obviously, and their hearts just open up to them. And so I think they're great, you know.
Do you have a favorite of those movies?
Of that time, I mean, the favorite movie I did was probably Heaven Help Us, which isn't sort of categorized in that group. But I mean, the favorite movie, no, I think the part I played in St. Elmo's Fire was the most like me and the most I brought to. I think that role would have been very, very different if someone else were playing it. And I knew when I was doing it that I'm doing something here, you know. Pretty in Pink, in all candor, I thought it was a silly movie when we were making it, but this is a movie about a girl making a dress and wanting to go to a dance, really? And, you know, clearly I was right again, you know. And, you know, 30 years later, we're still talking about it. And, you know, so...
She's so adorable.
Clearly.
Is so
clearly.
adorable. In that movie.
And,
but what about Less Than Zero? That's not really usually considered as part of the Brat Pack movies. But that's
there's a druggy crowd here, I can see.
That's such an interesting film too, though, because it's one, the DP on that movie is like one of the greatest.
Yeah, Ed Lockman is beautiful.
Ed Lockman. And the photography in that film is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
But it is an odd departure from the book in many ways.
Well, has nothing to do with the book, except the title. You know, that's an interesting movie in the sense that I don't think that movie's successful. I watched it about a year ago. I went to some thing and did a Q&A, and so I watched it again for the first time in 30-odd years, and I didn't think it was successful at all. When I signed on to do that movie, there was one script, and we showed up to shoot. There was an entirely different script by a different writer, but it had nothing to do with it. I don't think there's a line in it that's the same as the book. And
in both scripts?
No, the first script I remember being much more like the book. And then when we shot it, by the time we started filming and by the time we ended filming, it was that time, you know, you wouldn't remember, but the Nancy Reagan Just Say No kind of thing and all that. So the movie sort of, the studio executive saw it and said, well, this movie's about our children, really. This privileged Beverly Hills setting. Our kids can't be like this. No. Say no to drugs. So we reshot about 35% of that movie and plugged in this sort of ratcheted in this sort of drugs are bad kind of thing. Whereas Marek Kanievska, the guy who created the movie, he was an Englishman and he just captured a subset of people without opinion and without judgment, whereas the movie now that's finished is very much judgment that drugs are bad, which of course we know that they are, and all that. But it's two sort of movies that are cobbled together, and so I think it's not successful.
Interesting. So when you were sitting there and you were watching it for the first time in, you know, a decade or two at this screening, were you let down by it? Did you think it was successful?
I thought, there's that scene that we reshot. God, that's really out of place there. Yeah, and I thought, you know, I wasn't particularly good in it and things like that. But I mean, thought Bobby was great in it. But
I think your reaction to his death, even though that scene feels fairly after school, especially just because of he dies like that. I thought your reaction is very good. It's
fine.
A good moment
that's
back
fine. But it also wasn't a great deal of fun to shoot that movie. Some movies were really fun to shoot. Weekend at Bernie's, we had a ball. We were shooting Lesson Zero. You know, Lesson Zero was not really a lot of fun to shoot. You know?
Right. So Weekend at Bernie's 1 and 2, a lot of fun.
Let's just talk about one.
Just talk about one? 2 really pales in comparison to 1.
Well, when we're talking cinematic craft, I mean, let's face it.
I've always been partial to the voodoo of part 2. Just a general question of what
were you thinking?
No, what was it like shooting that movie? I mean, you'd be like, okay, in this scene, you guys are you're gonna pick Bernie up, you're gonna dance over here. Remember to keep his head from Like, what were the directions like? What were you doing day to day?
Well, I mean, on the first one, it was just ridiculous. I mean, and we knew it was ridiculous. It was like, wait, what if I play Monopoly with Bernie? Okay, I'll just set him up and we'll tie a string and we'll wave to the girl walking by. Okay, yeah, play Monopoly. That's a great idea. So next day I bring in my Monopoly set and we play Monopoly. And, you know, it's like, what if we throw him over the balcony? Yeah, good idea, yeah. What if tide comes up? What if high tide comes in and he washes out? Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
You guys were making it up as you went along?
I mean, a lot of it was, yes, a fair amount of it was made up.
That's incredible.
And a lot of it wasn't. And, I mean, Bob Kleiner wrote this crazy, ridiculous script and all, you know, but there was a fair amount of anything goes. I mean, there was nothing that was over the top. Right. It's like, let's have him have a toupee and let's staple it on his head. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. And I mean, the point was we were thinking these were good ideas.
Neglecting that, like, this entire movie is about 2 guys playing with a dead body.
I mean, but I'm sorry, Bernie holds up, though, you know.
100%, yeah. I mean,
a lot of those
still
movies
parody
don't, but I know.
But, so...
The day doesn't go by that a truck driver doesn't scream out at me red light, hey, where's Bernie? He's still dead.
But I'm fascinated by this idea that you guys were making up a fair amount of it as you went along. How did that happen? You get the script, you get on set, and then you guys are just all improvising and joking around?
One of those things, anything goes. I mean, there was no top for that. Once, and Terry was so good at sort of being dead, we kind of went, oh, well, if he's going to do that, then can't we just sort of do that? That kind of stuff. Because, you can't really imagine what it's going to be like. So in the script, Bernie is sitting on the couch, dead, and the party goes on. Well, okay, so a lot of it was just kind of craziness and reacting to him. And like the girl goes up and sleeps with Bernie and he comes back down and I say things like, well, I get yelled at if I just lay there, things like that. I mean, that was just sort of happened at the time. And Ted Koch, who directed, I have to say, would also sit there behind, something we shot a lot late at night, and Ted would sit there behind the camera when we were doing late night shoots and just go, cut, not funny, do something else.
So you guys were like, staple his head. I don't know.
Staple his head, yeah.
So you become a travel writer. How did that happen? You were already traveling a lot and kind of writing about your travels?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long story. But I traveled a lot. I sort of, travel changed my life in a certain way, and I traveled a lot, and I started writing about it.
Why did travel change your life?
Oh, I just thought that, I suppose, when people go traveling the world and backpacking in their 20s, I was making movies and things like that. So it was a certain way of escaping and sort of discovering who I was in a certain way and walking through a lot of fear, I think, that had been in my life. And it was the university of my life is what I call travel. It changed the way I was in the world. And I think travel is a great thing, and everyone benefits from it. Everyone comes back changed and better off for it. And a lot of the fear and things that we carry through life would disappear if Americans traveled. But anyway, and so I started writing about it, and I met an editor at a party, and I said, you ought to let me write for your magazine. And he said, you're an actor, dude. And I said, yeah, but I can tell a story. That's what I do for a living. And he thought that was a good answer. So I quickly became this sort of travel writer. And what I learned and what I knew intuitively that a lot of people didn't know is tell me a story, don't sell me a destination. And so I approached everything from story point of view. And so I became successful at it. And, and underneath every travel story I wrote was always the notion that this is important, this matters. It's not just for rich, frivolous people. Travel matters. And it can change your life, and it changed mine. You know what I mean?
What was the place that really changed you that you traveled to? What was the moment that you had while traveling where it really clicked, a transcendent moment?
Yeah, I was walking along the Camino de Santiago, which is this ancient pilgrim's route in Spain, of 500 miles across the north of Spain. And I just had one of those sort of breakdown moments where I was sobbing in a field of wheat in the middle of week 3 of walking across the country. And I just sort of had this cathartic moment of like, what am I doing in my life? And, I had a real realization, kind of one of those white light experiences that people have that like, wow, fear rules so much of my life and makes so many of my decisions. And that's crazy. I mean, a lot of the bad decisions I've made, I'd say all bad decisions I've made have been based in fear. Not every fearful decision is bad, but every bad decision I've made has been fearful. And to become aware of that was a huge transformative moment. And then from that it grew. Like I kept traveling and I started writing about it, and then it just grew into this whole other thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to the audience for questions right here.
Hey, Andrew, thank you for being here. Since this is your first novel, did you ever experience writer's block for this, or was the writing process seamless?
No, it all just happened.
3 days.
3 days, boom.
Book.
No rewriting, they're done. No, like I said, I was struggling with it for years, a version of this book. And then once I found Lucy's voice and started writing from her character, it all changed. And it did come fairly quickly. But I wrote about half the book, like, not knowing how sentences would end, just being like, I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, if she gets on the bus, then she's going to do this. Oh, my God. And so I wrote the book very quickly. And then about halfway through, it just stopped. And I had no idea. I had nothing else. I go, wow, I don't know what happens now. And I stopped for about 4 months or so. And then one day I know what happens if she gets on the bus. She goes here. And then I wrote again for another 4 months, and then it was done. So it was just sort of, I just followed.
You didn't know where she was going to go
No.
once she got on the bus?
No.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know where anything was going. It was the only time I've ever been writing where literally I'd be writing a sentence. Well, if she gets on the train, she's going to go see her grandfather. Oh my God, so she's going to go to Maine. And then it all just, so that was a very exciting feeling. And it was a bit, like we talked, just sort of stepping out, and is the end of the sentence going to be there? And like I say, I wrote till that story sort of stopped, and then it just sat there for a while. I did other things for months, and then one day I went, oh, I know what happens. And then I just wrote to the end. So.
Next question, right here.
Hi there. As you can tell, I wasn't brought up here, so I've got some movie watching of yours to catch up on. I'm just so impressed. It seems like you're an anything's possible guy. I mean, would you say that's, obviously, you know, you're in the right place at the right time. You said to somebody, can I write a travel book? And they said yes, but you don't see any barriers. You see whatever you want to do is possible for you. Do you see it like that?
Well, I get bored quickly, so, you know, look, life is long in certain ways, you know, and you got to do something during the day. I have always just followed things that make me feel like we talked about the first time I acted, I went, oh, there I am. First time I started writing about travel, I went, oh, there I am. First time I directed, I went, oh, there I am. When I was writing this book, finally, when I got Lucy's voice, I went, oh, there it is. I always have done things that make me feel, because all the things that I do sort of for a living are, quote, creative, because I would have no skill. I have absolutely no applicable skill to anything. I couldn't do anything else except sort of this stuff that's in my head. So I just follow things that make me feel like me in a certain way. You know, the only gift I've ever had is I never wanted to be anybody else. I just wanted to be me, like the better version of me. You know what I mean? So whether it's the writing or the acting or the directing, it's all the same thing to me.
Has there ever been something that you tried doing or started doing and felt like that wasn't you?
I'm not a very good dancer.
So we won't see you on Dancing with the Stars?
I was asked to be on Dancing with the
Were you
Stars,
really?
actually. Yeah, and I thought that would be not a good idea for me.
It's one of those things that
Yeah,
has
and that's
to be
a
on
tough
Dancing
one.
with the Stars.
See, it would be really fun to do, but I don't know. I just think it's tough to recover from Dancing with the Stars, frankly.
You know, a year later, you see clips of
Yeah,
you on it,
exactly.
and you're in the
that
sparkles.
outfit, and you're
Like,
doing the tango, and
yeah.
I'm just like, no, I don't want my kids to sort of have to live with that. Pretty in Pink is enough, you know.
It's really a show meant for washed-up politicians. Like, that's who should be on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, so I just kind of thought,
delay. You
I'm gonna-
stick to it.
I'm just going to do other stuff. But I enjoy watching it. I love the show. But no, I don't know. I just do what it feels to do, you know. I have to say, I love the writing and directing. I love waiting, not having to wait for somebody to call me and give me a chance to do it. You know, I hated that about acting. You know, and I also hated, frankly, going and auditioning for people that I felt like I didn't particularly have a lot of respect for, and I'm putting myself in a position to be rejected by someone that I don't respect. I just didn't like that feeling. You know, I wanted as few votes in my life as possible in that regard from people that you know, if I deeply admire you and oh God, I'd love to work with you, that would be great. But for people that I didn't feel that way, why am I putting myself in this position? I just feel crappy about myself afterward. So I tried to eliminate those, as many of those in my life as I can.
What was your worst audition where you were like, I really don't want to be auditioning
Many of
for
them.
this?
Many. I'm a terrible auditioner. Terrible. So
Was there something specifically that you really didn't want to audition for that you ended up auditioning for? And that was the moment?
There's so many breaking moments, but I do remember I was auditioning for some television show that I thought was just dreadful, and they kept me waiting for like an hour and a half, and I went in, and I just said, guys, I've been out there for an hour and a half, and sort of let it, and they're like, I can't believe this guy's coming in and yelling at us, and I went, I guess I should just leave now then, because I'm not getting this job, am I?
So you thought this television show was going to be dreadful based off of your history with Pretty in Pink. Did this show end up being The Sopranos or something?
Clearly, this is Mad Men. I mean, what's that about? Some advertising thing.
I've been out there.
Exactly. Clearly, I know exactly what I'm doing, yeah.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hey, Andrew. First off, congrats on the book. I have two questions. Regarding the book, like seeing the process of, you know, making a book, like, do you have a chance to maybe do another one? Or, and also, if there was a movie that you want to revisit and maybe want to do over, which one would it be?
I have an idea for another book that I'd like to do, yeah. And if I had a movie to revisit and do over, I would, is that what that was, the question? Yeah, that's an interesting question. A movie I did, which was not a very successful movie in any way, it was called The Year of the Gun, that John Frankenheimer, the late John Frankenheimer directed. And I would, it's the kind of movie that I liked, and I was just ill-equipped for it at the time in my life, and I would love that kind of thing again.
What was Frankenheimer like? He was a force,
He was a
right?
stern taskmaster. Yeah. I mean, a really gifted guy and a tough man. Wow. Yeah, I was afraid of him. Yeah, it's one of those things. And I was young. I was too young to be doing the role, and I was afraid of him, and it wasn't a good match at the time, frankly. You know, so I didn't.
Did he exploit that fear?
Yeah.
He strikes me as the type who would
He
have.
did, and that didn't serve either of us. You know.
Well, Andrew, I have to let you go. Just fly away. Is it on shelves now? Can
It's
people
on
buy it?
shelves now.
Amazon shelves, bookshelves. But go to the Strand and buy it. Buy things at the Strand, guys. Andrew McCarthy, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here.
guys. Thank you.